All right, hello, welcome back, everybody. PayPal and Patreon are down below if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. So, a issue has arisen recently that you might have noticed in the news, and that is India's desire to renegotiate the Indus River Treaty with Pakistan. This is one of the avenues, potentially the biggest one next to the issue with the Nile River and Egypt and Ethiopia, that might end up leading to what you could officially label as the first legitimate water war. The Indus River starts up in the Himalayas, like most of the rivers there do, and flows down through portions of India, then through the contested portion that both India and Pakistan claim, and then down into Pakistan itself, and is obviously Pakistan's big primary water provider. And there are a few other smaller rivers that also flow through the same area and end up dumping into the Indus River later. And in that northern portion of India, according to the treaty as is, India can do whatever it wants with the lower three rivers, but has to, for the most part, avoid really touching the upper three rivers, which includes the Indus River, which out of all of those rivers has about 80% of the water flow. Now, India has expressed discontent with the present treaty and wants to actually be able to build projects along their portion of the Indus River to most likely extract and redirect some decent portion of the water and send it southwards through a distribution system to aid with their agricultural irrigation, as they are facing a number of upcoming problems. Firstly, already in the immediate future, there is the issue of the lessening amount of water coming down through India and then into Bangladesh from the Brahmaputra River, which starts up in the Himalayas and flows a very long way through China before passing down into India and then Bangladesh. And China, for over a decade now, has been undertaking a project to build various dams and eventually pipelines and distribution systems along their portion of that river to, in the immediate future or near future, begin redirecting huge amounts of that water northwards into China, particularly the northern half of China, which is coming up on some severe water supply issues for similar reasons to why India would be facing water issues, as India, like many countries around the world, is rapidly depleting its groundwater aquifers to maintain adequate amounts of irrigation water supply for its agricultural crops at a rate which has it set to see large portions of it depleted by the 2040s or over the period of the 2040s. And obviously, when that excess water from the past is no longer available, that's going to make India's agriculture take a hit, is able to and presently does grow enough food to the amount of being able to feed about 1.5 billion people, and India's current population is about 1.4, which obviously is, less than 1.5. That's why they are exporting food. However, India's population is still increasing. It's going to peak lower than it was initially expected to, but it is still going to exceed 1.5 within 10 to 15 years or so. And so that would put them at rate about even, where they would be exactly supplying their own needs if it were not for the ongoing and upcoming much further reductions in water from the Brahmaputra River because of the China stuff that is ongoing, and also largely the upcoming depletion of groundwater aquifers, which would, over the 2040s and then into the early 2050s and beyond, see India's agricultural ability drop by around 20%. That means they would have to start importing in that time about 300 million people's worth of food. And that would be sort of like running into a brick wall because that much excess food provision, that much excess food exports on the global market does not just suddenly materialize out of nowhere. So they have to get some amount of supplemental water supply from somewhere. in order to make up for the eventual depletion of the groundwater aquifers, and building thousands of seawater desalination plants is just not a realistic option because of the hundreds of gigawatts of additional power generation capacity that would also require. One of the easier options would be to divert decent amounts of water from the Indus River. However, that obviously leads to the issue of, Pakistan wouldn't really go for that. So that kind of could only end in one option, which would be armed conflict. One of the simpler, most realistic, or most likely scenarios I would see it as would be India just at some point starts building this infrastructure along the Indus River and the other ones around the area as well. And after demanding that they stop doing so for however long, months, a few years maybe, and realizing that they're not going to stop, Pakistan attempt to airstrike all the various water infrastructure projects. So said airspace incursions would actually be met and intercepted, and there would be a lot of back and forth aerial combat. And after the conflict starts, India will probably try to carry out various cruise missile or airstrikes inside of Pakistan to take out portions of Pakistan's air force. Pakistan will probably eventually try to send in ground forces into that northern region of India to try to dislodge Indian forces that will obviously be protecting said infrastructure in the area, particularly to overrun and get rid of SAM sites or air defense systems. And obviously, any attempt to do that would be met by the Indian ground forces, unless you would see both ground armies fight to some degree, again, predominantly just in that northern area, and it eventually might spill over into them also fighting it out to try to resettle the whole who controls that disputed area issue in regards to the time frame or when things would potentially start or take place. That would be unknown for the moment. There's no real clear indicators for that, except for the general overarching timeline or countdown ticking clock that India has to work with, and that is that they have to do something, get something ready for a supplemental water solution before they get to the 2040s. They can't literally wait up until the last second. They would have to start doing stuff before we actually get to that decade. Ultimately, we'll have to wait and see. That's it for this one. So thank you everybody for sticking around and listening. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already. PayPal and Patreon are down below if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. There's a link in the description to a free access Google Drive that's full of docs containing all kinds of different data, graphs, charts, compilations across all kinds of different fields and subjects. There's a link beneath that one to my photography Instagram. There's a link in the top pinned comment to my cat's YouTube channel. May God bless and protect all of you, and I will see you all around next time.